Shocking! The galaxy trembled as entire worlds fell before the Predator Empire. No army stood, no fleet survived, until their path brought them face to face with humanity. From the ashes of ruined colonies, Earth unleashed a fleet born on a death world, a force that turned fear into fire and shattered empires. Watch till the end, like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more legendary human tales. The galaxy trembled beneath a nightmare it had not faced in countless ages. From the farthest reaches of the void came a species that did not negotiate, did not occupy, did not enslave. They consumed. Entire worlds were stripped bare, their oceans boiled, their cities erased, their skies blackened until nothing remained but husks of rock. Armies that had stood for centuries fell within days. Councils that had ruled with iron authority collapsed into silence as their fleets were devoured. The predators were not invaders with ambitions of empire. They were a storm of hunger, and wherever they passed, life itself was extinguished. Panic spread through the stars like wildfire. Allies who once boasted of strength begged for aid, and ancient powers retreated into isolation, unwilling to sacrifice themselves for others. It seemed the galaxy itself had bowed its head to inevitability. Desperation gave birth to a signal. A coalition of weaker races, those who knew their extinction was only moments away, sent a plea into the void. They did not know who would hear it. They did not even know if anyone remained who could answer. It was less a call for salvation and more a final scream against the darkness. Help us or remember us when we are gone. The predators pressed on, their fleets blotting out constellations, their victory assured. The signal vanished into the infinite silence, and those who sent it waited with broken hope. But then, an answer came. At first it was a whisper, a pulse of sound carried across frequencies thought abandoned. A voice translated into 100 tongues declared simply, "Earth has heard you." The words traveled faster than any fleet, striking terror into some, awe into others. Earth, humanity. A species spoken of only in scattered stories, newcomers to the galactic stage, survivors from a place most called uninhabitable. Their homeworld was a death world, a planet where storms tore continents apart, where predators hunted in endless cycles, where nature itself seemed determined to extinguish life. And yet against all odds humans had thrived. They had not only survived their crucible world, but carried its lessons into the stars. To many, they were reckless savages. To others, they were legends wrapped in rumor. But to those who understood the weight of the signal, they were something far more dangerous. A species that had never known surrender. The council chambers erupted in disbelief. Humanity could not possibly be the answer. They were too young, too few, too reckless. They lacked the vast empires of the core races, the ancient technologies of the elder species, the fleets numbering in the thousands that the predators themselves had torn apart with ease. What could they offer against an enemy that devoured entire galaxies? Yet while others doubted, the predators did not pause. They continued their march, obliterating every colony that lay in their path, confident that humanity would be no different. To them, Earth was just another meal, another fragile world to be consumed, but in their arrogance, they forgot the difference between prey and predators forged in hell. Across the black, human fleets began to stir. Ships long hidden in silence powered up, their reactors flaring like stars born anew. Dockyards that had slept in shadows launched vessels built for a single purpose: war. These were not elegant cruisers, not polished dreadnoughts designed for spectacle. They were jagged, scarred, bristling with weapons, machines of death crafted by a species that had survived endless cycles of self-destruction and emerged stronger every time. Each ship was a promise written in steel. Humanity had not come to negotiate, had not come to plead. They had come to kill. As the predator swarms pushed deeper, their sensors began to pick up anomalies. Fleets that should have been undefended now resisted with shocking force. Ambushes erupted in asteroid belts, mines detonated with precision that crippled entire wings. Reports filtered back that human ships did not fight like others. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They did not scatter when cornered. They fought with the patience of hunters, bleeding their enemies with each encounter, turning every engagement into a test of endurance that the predators for the first time, began to lose. In the silence of their command halls, the Predators dismissed these signs as irrelevant. One fleet could be destroyed, one battle could be avenged, but the pattern spread, growing larger, sharper, impossible to ignore. Every strike cost them more than they could explain. And always, at the heart of the resistance, was the same banner, the same name carried by every broadcast. Earth has arrived. The galaxy had begged for salvation, but what came was something else entirely. It was not a savior. It was not a shield. It was a fleet from a death world, carrying the fury of a species that had learned long ago that mercy was not a gift of nature, but a choice made only by the strong. And humanity had chosen war. The Predators did not yet understand what stood before them. They still thought of humans as another fragile species to be consumed. They still believed their hunger unstoppable. But as their fleets advanced, and the Terran Deathworlder fleet moved to meet them, the first seeds of dread took root. For the Predators had seen many enemies. They had never faced one that smiled through blood and whispered, "Now it is your turn to run." The Predators advanced with renewed arrogance, their fleets blotting out the stars above defenseless systems. Their ships so vast they appeared like mountains drifting through the void. They had consumed empires older than humanity and crushed fleets whose size dwarfed anything Earth could possibly construct. To them, the human resistance was little more than an annoyance, a desperate flicker of rebellion destined to be stamped out. Yet as they drove deeper into contested space, cracks began to appear in their certainty. Battles that should have been one-sided began to stretch longer than expected. Supply lines, once secure, found themselves ambushed by human ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished before retaliation could land. Convoys of the Predators' own forces, carrying the spoils of war, were suddenly intercepted and annihilated in coordinated strikes that suggested not chaos, but frightening precision. Still, the Predators dismissed it as stubborn resistance, the last breath of prey clinging to survival. But then came the signs they could not ignore. Human ships, even when battered and bleeding, did not behave as other species did. Where other fleets would break formation under fire, humans tightened theirs. Where others would flee once half their numbers were lost, humans pressed forward with a calm that unsettled the Predator commanders. Vessels that should have retreated instead rammed enemy cruisers, detonating their cores in suicidal bursts that crippled ships far larger than their own. It was madness by any standard, but it was not without purpose. Each sacrifice was measured, each loss carefully chosen to inflict wounds that could not easily heal. It was as if humanity had turned war itself into a weapon, bleeding their enemies dry with every encounter. Reports began to circulate among Predator ranks of human marines boarding their ships during combat. These were not the disciplined soldiers of the galactic powers the Predators had faced before. They were something else entirely. Armored figures who fought with a brutality that unsettled even the most hardened Predators. They advanced through corridors engulfed in flame, fought even after their suits were punctured, clawed their way forward as if death itself had no claim over them. Stories spread of soldiers who, mortally wounded, detonated charges that brought entire Predator vessels crashing down, leaving the survivors haunted by the sight of humans who seemed to welcome death if it meant victory. The Predator commanders scoffed at such tales, calling them exaggerations bred from fear, but whispers began to grow. Something about these humans did not make sense. Their worlds were small, their fleets few, yet the weight of their resistance seemed far greater than their size. Every destroyed human vessel seemed to spawn two more. Every planet scarred by fire turned into a fortress instead of a grave. The Predators did not yet understand it, but they were beginning to sense it. Humanity was not fighting for survival in the way others did. They were fighting with something colder, sharper, older. They were fighting to teach a lesson. Tension grew as the Predators launched their largest offensive yet, a fleet designed to overwhelm the humans entirely, to drown their defiance beneath raw numbers. They chose a human-held colony on the edge of the contested zone, believing it would be crushed quickly. But when they arrived, they found not civilians cowering in fear, but fortified defenses that had been prepared with terrifying foresight. Mines filled the void, hidden beneath debris fields that tore Predator formations apart. Artillery cannons on the planet's surface punched through battleship hulls with brutal accuracy. And when the predators finally forced their way into the atmosphere, human resistance fighters did not scatter. They dug in, fought in ruined cities, turned every street into a kill zone. Days turned into weeks. The predators expected exhaustion to set in, for morale to crumble, but the opposite occurred. Each day the humans fought harder. Each day the resistance grew more coordinated, as if the humans were not fighting to survive, but training themselves to become sharper with every battle. Predator losses mounted far beyond projections. A campaign meant to last hours became one of their bloodiest sieges, and though they eventually burned the colony to ash, it came at a cost so severe their commanders refused to speak of it. In the aftermath, whispers began even among the Predator leadership. Humanity was not normal. They were not simply another stubborn race delaying the inevitable. There was something else beneath the surface, something that made them fight differently, something that made their fleets adapt faster, hit harder, endure longer. The Predators called it madness. Others began to call it strategy. And though they had crushed one world, they could not shake the unease that spread through their fleets like rot. For deep within their calculations, their leaders began to see a truth they could not yet admit. Humanity was not losing. Humanity was preparing. Every clash, every battle, every sacrifice was not desperation. It was a blade being sharpened. And though the Predators could not yet understand what awaited them, the first flickers of dread began to burn. The Predators gathered their fleets, confident that the crushing of the colony had broken humanity's will. Yet as their war councils spread across the void, they could not shake the gnawing unease that lingered like smoke after fire. Reports came in from scouts that entire Predator convoys had been erased with surgical precision. Supply depots burned without warning. Communication relays fell silent. At first they assumed it was sabotage or luck, until they began to study the patterns. These were not random acts of defiance. The timing, the execution, the flawless coordination, all of it revealed a truth that the Predators had refused to consider. Humanity was orchestrating a war far beyond their size. The revelation came during the Predator fleet's march into what they believed to be human frontier space. Their scouts detected no large concentrations of vessels, no defenses capable of challenging their strength. They pressed forward with arrogance, expecting to burn another world. But as the first wave of their ships pushed through, space itself betrayed them. Gravity wells flickered into existence, pulling ships from faster-than-light travel, scattering formations into chaos. Debris fields long thought natural suddenly came alive with hidden weapons, mines disguised as rock, detonating in perfect synchronization. And then, from the darkness of the void, human warships emerged. Not dozens, not hundreds, but entire squadrons, vessels that had not been seen before. The Predators were caught between disbelief and fear. These ships were not the ragged fleets they had expected. They bore the scars of battle, yet carried weapons far beyond anything recorded. They moved with eerie coordination, striking not as prey fleeing predators, but as hunters driving their quarry into a trap. Predator vessels, enormous and powerful, found themselves ensnared in overlapping kill zones, hammered by precision fire that shattered shields and tore through hulls. Human vessels darted in and out of battle, using the chaos of the void itself to blind and divide the enemy. Every maneuver revealed a disturbing reality. Humanity had not been improvising. They had been waiting. The Predator admirals began to understand the scale of the deception. All those desperate last stands, all those suicidal charges, all those destroyed colonies, they were not random acts of defiance. They were distractions. They had been designed to buy time, while the Predators focused their attention on burning one world after another. Humanity had been assembling something unseen, a fleet that did not match their projected numbers, a fleet whose existence was denied by every calculation, a fleet now fully revealed in the black silence of space. Shock rippled through Predator ranks as their casualties mounted in hours. Ships that had survived countless wars suddenly found themselves ripped apart by coordinated strikes. Their formations crumbled, their commanders overwhelmed by tactics they had never encountered. The humans did not fight like other civilizations. They did not seek to retreat or conserve. They fought with cold efficiency, their maneuvers filled with traps within traps, layers of strategy so intricate that the predators realized too late they had walked into a carefully prepared battlefield. And then came the moment that broke the illusion of predator superiority. In the midst of the slaughter, a massive silhouette emerged from the shadows of a dead star. At first, the predators believed it to be one of their own dreadnoughts, so colossal was its form. But as the light of the distant sun caught its hull, the truth froze every predator commander in disbelief. It was a human warship, not one of the smaller, agile vessels that had harried their fleets, but something entirely new. It moved with a presence that seemed almost alive, its weapons arrays glowing like a storm preparing to break, and when it fired, the void itself seemed to split apart. The first Predator battleship struck by its barrage was torn in half, its shielding useless against the sheer magnitude of the blast. The second fell moments later, its hull punctured as though it were nothing more than fragile glass. Panic spread as the realization struck them. Humanity had unveiled a warship capable of standing against their greatest vessels, a ship that should not exist, a ship that rewrote the balance of power in an instant. The Predators had assumed that humanity's technology was inferior, that their desperation was a symptom of weakness. Now they understood that they had been deceived from the beginning. Humanity had hidden their strength, conserving their most devastating weapons until the perfect moment. The Predator fleet scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The battlefield was no longer theirs. The humans controlled every angle, every maneuver, every strike. What had begun as an invasion turned into a massacre, with Predator vessels destroyed at a pace they could not comprehend. For the first time in living memory, the Predators tasted fear not as a passing thought, but as a crushing weight that settled on every captain, every soldier, every commander. And as the remnants of their fleet limped away, shattered and broken, the truth burned in their minds like fire. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was something else entirely. They were patient, cunning, and merciless. They had used every battle, every sacrifice, every world lost as bait, sharpening themselves until the moment of revelation. And now that moment had arrived, the Predators realized they had made a mistake from which they might never recover. The Predators had always prided themselves on adaptation. Their empires stretched across countless systems because they adjusted to every resistance, crushing every defiance with overwhelming force. Yet after the slaughter at the Dead Star, they could no longer deny that humanity had changed the rules of war. Their High Council demanded retaliation, their generals promised new tactics, and their engineers rushed to reconfigure weapon systems. They believed that with fresh strategies and concentrated firepower, they could regain control of the war. But what they did not understand was that humanity had already anticipated this response. For every adjustment the Predators made, humanity had prepared 3 counters. When the Predators consolidated their forces into massive fleets, believing strength lay in numbers, human intelligence operations struck deep. Entire supply lines were erased overnight, starbases that fueled their war effort were reduced to dust, and communication relays vanished without explanation. Their mighty fleets gathered for decisive action were left stranded without resources. Ships drifted powerless, easy prey for human squadrons that fell upon them like wolves among crippled prey. When the Predators tried to split their forces into smaller hunting packs to avoid such traps, humanity turned the void itself into a weapon. Gravity fields, mine networks, and stealth craft turned every corner of space into a gauntlet of death. The Predators discovered that no matter their formation, humanity was already waiting with a response. Desperation spread through Predator Command as their leaders ordered new weapons brought to the front. Planetary bombardments were intensified, chemical plagues deployed on surviving colonies, and slave-taking campaigns escalated. They believed cruelty would break human resolve. Instead, every atrocity hardened Earth's resolve further. Survivors rose from ashes not with despair, but with fury. Entire generations pledged themselves to vengeance, their oaths carried in encrypted transmissions that reached every corner of the human fleet. Unlike other civilizations, humanity did not fracture under pressure. They united, their grief transforming into cold precision that made them fight with a relentlessness no predator had ever faced. The predators tried to match human cunning with deception of their own. Fleets feigned retreat, hoping to draw humans into ambushes, but these tricks were met with eerie silence. Human commanders did not pursue rashly, they did not spring the traps. Instead, they watched, they waited, and then they countered with layers of strategy so complex that predator admirals were left bewildered. Fleets hidden in asteroid belts turned out to be illusions, projected by drones, while the real human forces struck from behind. Enemy vessels that believed they had cornered a single human cruiser suddenly found themselves surrounded by an entire flotilla. It became clear that humanity was not just fighting battles. They were conducting a war of intellect, one where every predator move had already been calculated and countered. Even the predator soldiers began to sense the inevitability of their collapse. Once they had spoken of humans as prey, fragile creatures who fought out of desperation. Now whispers spread of Deathworlders, beings born from a world so hostile that even their oceans and skies tried to kill them daily. Stories of human endurance reached predator ears. Soldiers who continued fighting after being wounded beyond reason. Fleets that refused to surrender even when cornered. Commanders who sacrificed everything not out of desperation, but to ensure another trap would close upon the enemy. The predators began to realize they were not facing prey at all. They were facing an apex predator that had been caged too long. Then came the human escalation. From the void of distant systems, new warships emerged. Massive carriers, dreadnoughts, and vessels whose existence had been dismissed as impossible by predator intelligence. Their hulls bore scars of countless battles, their weapons glowed with terrifying power, and their mere presence shattered predator morale. These were not ordinary ships. They were machines of vengeance, forged in the crucible of loss. When they entered battle, entire predator fleets collapsed in hours. Their commanders unable to comprehend how human vessels outmaneuvered them at every turn. But what struck the predators most was not just the firepower or the tactics, it was the mindset. Humanity did not seek victory through brute strength alone. They sought domination through persistence, through resilience, through a refusal to yield no matter the odds. Battles that should have ended in predator triumph turned into wars of attrition where humanity thrived. Every defeat they suffered was temporary, every setback a step toward another trap. The predators, who had always relied on fear to control their enemies, suddenly found themselves unable to inspire terror. For the first time, they were the ones afraid, and as the Predator High Council watched their borders shrink, their fleets torn apart, and their people whispering of human vengeance, they still clung to a dangerous belief. They convinced themselves that humanity had revealed all it could, that this was the height of Earth's strength, and that if the Predators threw their entire empire into the conflict, they could still prevail. They could still crush the Deathworlders before it was too late. What they failed to realize was that humanity was only beginning to show its hand. Every battle, every trap, every devastating warship was but a step in a larger plan. The Predators believed they still had a chance to win. Humanity knew the truth. The Predators had already lost. The Predator High Council had convinced themselves that the war had reached its peak, that humanity had already revealed every secret it possessed. Their advisors argued that the hidden warship, the traps, the precision strikes, all of it was the last desperate push of a civilization fighting extinction. If they pushed harder, if they sacrificed more ships, more soldiers, more resources, they believed they could drown humanity beneath sheer weight. It was the same tactic that had broken countless empires before. But when they launched their largest fleet in recorded history into human-controlled space, they did not find a desperate enemy clinging to survival. They found the second twist of humanity's war, something so terrifying it would echo through the stars forever. The Predator Armada surged across the frontier like a tidal wave, their banners blotting out the void, their communications filled with promises of victory. For 3 days they advanced uncontested, their admirals growing confident again, convinced that humanity had finally run out of strength. But on the 4th day, the stars themselves changed. The void shimmered with distortions, gravitational anomalies twisting space into unnatural shapes. Predator ships were thrown off course, their formations shattered by unseen forces. At first they believed it was a natural phenomenon, until human transmissions began to bleed through their channels. Calm, unshaken voices whispered coordinates, commands, and taunts directly into Predator comms, as though humanity controlled not just ships, but the very fabric of space. Then it appeared. Out of the rift came not a single warship, nor a fleet, but an entire armada hidden in plain sight. For years, humanity had been quietly constructing vessels in dead systems beyond the reach of Predator intelligence. These were not the swift raiders or hidden cruisers that had harried their fleets. These were Leviathans, battleships larger than anything the Predators had ever seen, bristling with weapons that glowed with energy older than their empires. Engines thundered with power, derived from technologies the Predators had declared impossible. Each ship carried with it not only human soldiers, but also alliances forged in silence, because humanity had not fought this war alone. When the Predator armada reeled from the shock of these colossal ships, the next revelation struck them like a spear. Humanity had reached out to other civilizations, species long broken under Predator rule, and offered them something no one else had dared: the chance for vengeance. Across the human formations, alien war banners flew alongside Earth's. Species thought extinct revealed themselves in battle cruisers rebuilt by human engineers. Survivors of Predator conquests piloted vessels guided by human tactics. Humanity had not only risen from their own ashes, they had lit the fires of rebellion across the galaxy. The Predator fleets found themselves facing not just humans, but a coalition of survivors who had been waiting in the shadows for centuries. The Predators panicked. Their commanders screamed orders, demanding their ships regroup, but nothing could stem the tide. Human warships, guided by flawless coordination, cut through the Predator armada with surgical precision. Allied vessels, once fractured and scattered, fought with a unity forged under human leadership. The Predators realized with horror that humanity had turned their greatest weapon, fear, against them. For centuries they had ruled by terror, but now they were the ones who inspired resistance. They were the ones hunted. The psychological collapse of the Predator fleets was immediate. Veterans who had fought 100 campaigns froze when confronted by the sheer scale of human engineering and the sight of alien allies who should not exist. Entire squadrons surrendered mid-battle, their morale broken by the realization that humanity had created something greater than any empire, a coalition of the wronged, united by vengeance. Predator admirals, who had once barked orders with confidence, now found themselves begging for retreat. But humanity gave no quarter. The true weapon humanity had unleashed was not their hidden fleet, nor their impossible technology, nor even their Deathworld resilience. The true weapon was their mindset, the refusal to surrender, the ability to endure loss after loss, and the power to inspire others to rise with them. For the first time, the Predators understood what it meant to fight a species that did not break under pressure, but grew sharper with every strike. They had believed themselves unchallengeable alphas, masters of the stars. Now they understood they had triggered something far greater than war. They had awakened a reckoning. And as the Predator High Council watched in horror from their distant strongholds, they finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. They had thought humanity would burn quietly. Instead, they had spread fire across the galaxy. They had thought the destruction of colonies would erase resistance. Instead, it had birthed a fleet that no empire could hope to contain. And when they realized that even their most desperate measures could not stop the advance, a final thought settled in their minds. One they could not silence. This war was no longer about conquest. It was about survival. The Predators had believed humanity fought for its own survival. Now they realized humanity fought for something larger. Justice, vengeance, and the promise that no predator would ever again burn another world without consequence. And in that revelation came despair, because the Predators knew the truth. They had triggered a war they could never win. The Predator Empire had always envisioned their wars as grand spectacles of domination. Their fleets darkened skies, their weapons burned continents, and their enemies surrendered beneath overwhelming firepower. But when the final confrontation came, it was not the predators who dictated the terms of battle. Humanity chose the battlefield, humanity chose the hour, and humanity brought with them a storm the galaxy would remember for eternity. The Predator Armada assembled above their fortress world, the jewel of their empire, its skies thick with ships and its orbital defenses glowing like 1,000 suns. To them it was unassailable. For centuries, this world had been the throne of terror, the heart of their control, the place where every conquest was celebrated. Now it would be the stage of their undoing. As the Predator commanders barked orders, they saw ripples tear across space. Reality itself seemed to groan as an impossible number of ships emerged from hyperspace. Humanity had arrived, not with a token fleet, not with scattered vessels, but with a wall of steel and fire that stretched across the stars. The Deathworlder fleet had come. At first, the Predators still believed victory was possible. Their ships outnumbered humanity's forces 3-1. Their orbital defenses were powered by reactors the size of mountains. Their ground armies numbered in the billions. Yet when the first volleys were exchanged, confidence began to collapse. Human warships did not scatter or hesitate. They advanced like a blade cutting through water, their formations unbreakable, their firepower precise. Every Predator battleship that opened fire was answered by coordinated barrages that ripped through shields and detonated reactors. Within the first hour, hundreds of Predator vessels were gone, vanishing in explosions that lit up the void like a funeral pyre. But it was not just the human warships that broke them. The coalition of allies, once thought shattered forever, descended upon the Predator fleets with fury. Species long enslaved or exterminated returned, their vengeance sharpened by centuries of grief. They struck with tactics and weapons taught by humanity, fighting not as scattered rebels, but as a single army. Predator captains who once barked commands with arrogance now listened in horror to their comms, as voices of civilizations they had destroyed declared vengeance before blasting them into silence. The Predators had ruled through fear, but humanity had taught the galaxy that fear could be broken. As the battle raged, the Predator High Council activated their ultimate weapon, a planet-sized cannon buried within their fortress world, capable of annihilating entire fleets with a single discharge. It was their final hope, their ace that had humbled other civilizations. The weapon powered up, energy gathering in a blinding sphere above the planet's surface. Predator commanders cried out in triumph, certain that humanity would scatter in panic. Yet humanity did not retreat. They did not falter. Instead, one ship moved forward, larger than the rest, scarred yet unbroken. The Terran dreadnought that had led them through countless battles. Its captain spoke only once across all frequencies, a voice calm and cold. Fire. The dreadnought unleashed a weapon the Predators had not believed possible. Not a cannon, not a missile, but a wave of controlled gravitational energy, collapsing the very fabric of space around the Predator weapon. The sphere of energy imploded before it could be released, tearing apart the weapon and detonating half the fortress world in a cataclysmic blast. Predator fleets reeled as debris and shockwaves tore through their ranks. The unthinkable had happened. Their greatest weapon, their symbol of supremacy, was gone in an instant. Humanity had erased it as if it had never existed. What followed was not battle, but slaughter. Human fleets drove forward with terrifying precision, exploiting every weakness. Predator formations collapsed as commanders abandoned their posts. Entire wings of ships fled, only to be hunted down by human squadrons. Ground armies that had once marched with pride now begged for surrender as human drop troops and allied forces descended upon their strongholds. Resistance shattered, morale evaporated, and the Predator Empire finally understood what it meant to face extinction. For the Predators, the most horrifying part was not the weapons or the fleets. It was the relentlessness. Humanity did not fight like conquerors seeking territory or resources. They fought with the weight of vengeance, with the determination to ensure that this war would never be repeated. Predator soldiers captured alive whispered of human eyes that burned with fury, of commanders who gave no speeches of glory, only cold promises that the predators would never rise again. In every strike, in every maneuver, the message was clear. This was not a war for survival. This was a reckoning. As the Predator homeworld burned and their fleets disintegrated, the High Council made their final desperate transmission. They begged for parley, for negotiations, for terms. They offered reparations, surrender, even their empire itself. But humanity did not answer. The silence of Earth's fleet was the only response, and it was louder than any declaration of war. Hours later, the council chamber was reduced to ash, vaporized in a final bombardment that erased the last symbols of Predator rule. When the smoke cleared and the stars fell quiet, the galaxy looked upon the battlefield and understood a new truth. The Predators who had terrorized countless worlds were gone, erased not by chance, but by the will of a single species that refused to surrender. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe understood why Deathworlders were feared. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity had conquered the unconquerable. When the fires finally dimmed and the last Predator fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage, the galaxy entered a silence it had never known before. For centuries, the Predator Empire had ruled with an iron claw, their fleets a constant shadow over every world, their decrees written in the blood of countless civilizations. That shadow was gone now, erased in weeks of fire and vengeance delivered by humanity and the allies they had rallied to their side. Yet in that silence, the weight of what had been unleashed began to settle across the stars. Every civilization, whether ally or distant observer, now carried the same truth in their hearts. The galaxy had changed forever. On the liberated worlds, survivors emerged from the ruins of their enslavement, their chains shattered not by mercy, but by the thunder of human cannons. For generations they had whispered of justice, though few had believed it possible. Now they saw their former masters obliterated, their symbols of power erased, their arrogance crushed beneath the relentless advance of Deathworlders. Alien children grew up no longer fearing the Predator patrols that once stalked their skies, but instead retelling the story of the day the humans arrived. Humanity's fleet was no longer spoken of as an army. It was remembered as a storm, a force of nature that rose from despair to deliver vengeance when no one else could. Within the ruins of the Predator capital, allied historians and soldiers walked among the shattered towers, their eyes lingering on the wreckage of a throne room where generations of cruelty had been decided. They found no triumphant speeches carved into walls, no monuments to glory. They found only silence, as though the Predators themselves had known that their empire would not last forever. And among the ashes, they recorded a truth that would be whispered across the galaxy for centuries, that it had been humanity who had brought the Predators to their knees. Humanity who had carried the weight of vengeance for all, and humanity who had turned despair into fire. But in the halls of Earth's own command, the mood was not one of celebration. The admirals who had watched the Predator fleets burn did not speak of conquest nor of glory. They spoke of the cost. The colonies that had been lost could never be restored. The billions who had perished could never be returned, and the scars etched into the human soul would not fade easily. Yet even in mourning there was pride. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could bleed and still rise, that they could be broken and still strike back harder than before. They had revealed to all civilizations that surrender was not inevitable, that even the most brutal empire could fall. For the Predators who survived, scattered remnants hiding in distant systems, the aftermath was worse than destruction. They lived as fugitives in a galaxy that now despised them, hunted by those they had once enslaved, haunted by the memory of human fleets descending like executioners. For the first time, Predators felt the very fear they had inflicted on others. They had underestimated humanity, had dismissed their tenacity, had mocked their resilience. Now they were the story whispered in fear, not of power, but of downfall. Their legacy was not empire, but ruin. And so the galaxy learned a lesson that no one would ever forget. Humanity was not just another civilization to be conquered, not just another voice among the stars. They were Deathworlders, forged in the fire of a planet that had never given them peace. They had brought with them not only weapons and ships, but a mindset that could not be broken, a will that could not be bent, and a fury that, once awakened, would burn until nothing stood in its way. Empires would rise and fall, stars would be born and die, but the legend of humanity's vengeance would endure. The galaxy whispered it like a prayer, or a warning. Worlds fell before the predators, but a single human fleet blocked their path. And in that moment, the predators fell forever. This is only one tale among many in humanity's rise. If this story struck you, if it left you with the weight of vengeance and pride, then make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the next chapter in the legend of humanity. The stars have not seen the last of us.